Cherry gets stronger by multiplying force, recovery, and control together. So every time Pitborn grows, Cherry does not become a little stronger. He becomes stronger in several dimensions at once. More chi, faster chi, better control, deeper recovery, harder impact, sharper senses, less leakage. By the later stages, his body stops feeling like a body that merely channels power. It becomes a body built to breed power under pressure. The body resonance system Pitborn grows in shadow. Cherry grows in flesh. They mirror each other. When Pitborn learns to sunder, Cherry's body learns to break rhythm. When Pitborn learns to seal, Cherry's blood learns to feed on conflict. When Pitborn learns to rush, Cherry's nerves learn to cross distance before hesitation can vote. When Pitborn opens orchard or bloom, Cherry's chi learns to rule space itself. That means Cherry's body is no longer just human in the ordinary sense. It becomes a resonance vessel. The 5 parts of Cherry's body that change first one. His blood becomes a chi bearer. It starts storing battle pressure, truth, and commitment instead of dumping them as stress. 2 spine, his spine becomes a coil engine. Every twist, step, and breath gains stored spring and predator timing. 3 nerves, his reactions stop being panic-based. His nerves become governed lightning. 4 lungs, his breath begins compressing chi instead of merely calming him. Breathing becomes power generation. 5 shadow, his shadow stops being passive. It becomes an extension of stance, hunger, and movement through Pitborn. The resonance ladder 0, 17 seeds, Bloodwake hatch Pitborn is newly born, and Cherry's body begins its first change. Cherry gains. Predator's breath, he can lower his pulse and direct chi into specific limbs on command. Pulse sight, he starts sensing fear, hesitation, lies, and weak intent as distortions in a person's rhythm. Shadow grip, his fingers, feet, and stance become unnaturally adhesive and controlled, making his movement quieter and harder to dislodge. At this stage, Cherry is not yet overwhelming. He is dangerous because he starts to notice more than other people do. This is the beginning of governed instinct. 18, 35 seeds, Carver frame, this is the first real body spike. Pitborn learns the law of sunder, and Cherry's body follows. Cherry gains. Sunder pulse, the first strike after stillness, disrupts an enemy's rhythm, slowing their body and chi flow. Predator spine, his torso can coil and uncoil with shocking force, multiplying the power of elbows, palms, shoulders, and turning steps. Talon step, short-range bursts of movement that cut angles instantly instead of running through them. Body changes. Tendons tighten like drawn wire. Hips and shoulders align into snap force. His first movement becomes unnervingly sharp. This is where Cherry stops looking merely disciplined and starts looking predatory. 36, 53 seeds, Brandhart state. This is where Pitborn's hunger becomes nourishment. Pitborn learns seal, and Cherry's blood becomes a furnace. Cherry gains. Blood seal body, when he marks a target or commits fully to a chosen act, his strikes begin feeding him back strength, focus, and recovery. Brandhart circulation, pain, heat, and pressure stop draining him as quickly. They become fuel if he stays composed. Devourer's lung, his breath can pull scattered force back into center during conflict, preventing panic leakage. Body changes. Recovery accelerates. Bruising matters less. Stamina deepens. His pulse remains stable in violent moments. This is the stage where Cherry no longer just spends energy. He starts learning how to profit from conflict. 54, 71 seeds, Onslaught nervous system, Pitborn learns rush, and Cherry's body becomes built for violent arrival. Cherry gains. Nerves stop flinching at resistance. Legs and lower back become launch mechanisms. Shoulders and ribs can absorb impact without losing posture at this stage. Cherry becomes frightening because he stops approaching like a thinker and starts arriving like a verdict. 72, 89 seeds, Slaughter Gate physique. This is the space ruling stage. Boundary sense, he can feel where a person wants to flee before they move. Bloom body. Furnace skeleton, Cherry compresses chi into stillness, then detonates it through his whole frame. Bloom pulse, delayed bursts released through fists, feet, chest, or breath. Heat sovereignty, the longer he remains composed, the more dangerous the eventual release. Body changes. His body begins to affect surrounding space. His stillness becomes threatening. His movement starts imposing rules on the room. This is where Cherry stops being just a fighter. He becomes a field event. 107 seeds, Predator Ascendant Pitborn becomes large enough to partially overlap with Cherry. Sovereign Scent, Cherry can track fear, injury, dishonesty, and weakness across distance like a bloodhound with spiritual intelligence. Body changes. His shadow becomes active in combat. Branch swapping gets faster. His combat presence begins breaking weaker opponents before contact. At this stage, Cherry does not merely wield power. He wears it. 108 seeds, Crown Spawn Pitheart Sovereign. This is the full ascension. Pitborn Crowns. Cherry forms a secondary chi core, not a new organ in a medical sense, a new power heart. It forms between sternum and lower dannan and is called the pit heart. Cherry gains. Pit heart engine, a second pulse that stores force instead of leaking it. He becomes calm at the center and catastrophic at the edges. This is not just stronger Cherry. This is Cherry become a true chamber-born predator. The 6 branches of chi in Cherry's body. Pitborn has 6 attribute branches. Cherry's body mirrors each one differently. 1 root chi iron chamber body. This is the pressure branch. Body attributes: denser bones, immovable hips, crushing grip, lower center stability, extreme pain tolerance. Body techniques: stone lung, breath sinks chi into the legs and spine, making him nearly impossible to uproot. Burial palm strikes that feel like walls falling. Mountain rush, a slow-looking entry that hits like a battering ram. Grave seal, marked conflict-hardened skin, bone, and tendons. This form makes Cherry feel like consequence with weight. 2 furnace chi, ember body. This is the burst branch. Body attributes: explosive fast twitch power, heat-bearing fascia, pain to force conversion, rising damage. The longer pressure builds body techniques. Kiln breath, breath superheats chi before release. Ash step, every planted step leaves stored heat behind. Furnace seal, marked targets start feeding Cherry burst output. Furnace bloom fist, delayed internal detonation through the strike. This form makes Cherry terrifying when stillness breaks. 3 venom chi, serpent body. This is the cleanest extension of anonymous snake chi. Body attributes: tendon elasticity, unnatural precision, constriction strength, toxic chi in fingertips, wrists, and gaze, execution focused calm. Body techniques: fang thread, needle-like chi entering nerves and flow points. Venom seal, striking a marked target siphons their composure and chi. Coil rush, forward entry that wraps movement instead of merely colliding. Red constrictor, space control that tightens around the chosen enemy. This form makes Cherry elegant, cold, and lethal. 4 veil chi, ghost body. This is the silence branch. Body attributes: reduced presence, noiseless gait, intent masking, anti-scrying aura, lice amplification. Body techniques: quiet pulse, disrupts speech, rhythm, and concentration. Ghost seal, marks the target by revealing their hidden motives. Shade rush, movement that feels like a blink through shadow. Mute orchard, creates a dead sound territory that suffocates reaction. This form makes Cherry feel like punishment arriving unseen. 5 tide chi, moonwater body. This is the sustain and recovery branch. Body attributes: fluid joints, deep oxygen economy, accelerated healing, emotional cooling under pressure. Long fight superiority. Body techniques: river bones, body absorbs and redirects force instead of meeting it head-on. Moon seal, marked exchanges restore Cherry's core instead of draining it. River rush, movement that slips through resistance instead of smashing it. Tidal bloom, wave-like bursts that damage enemies while restoring Cherry's center. This form makes him nearly impossible to wear down. 6 storm chi, thunder body. This is the pursuit branch. Body attributes: lightning fast nerves, visual overclock, snap acceleration, chain impact force, relentless chase instinct. Body techniques: static hand, chi charged impacts that jolt multiple targets or systems. Storm seal, every hit on a marked target builds electric momentum. Flash rush, the fastest version of Cherry's forward entry. Skyhook orchard, yanks targets back into range when they try to flee. This form makes Cherry look less like a man moving and more like a strike arriving. This slots in cleanly after Chapter 4 as Cherry's next evolution. The exponential chi law of Cherry and Pitborn Cherry's chi did not rise in a straight line after Pitborn was born. It split, then looped, then came back stronger. Every blood seed Pitborn devoured sent an echo pulse back into Cherry's body. That echo pulse did not increase one trait at a time. It increased three at once: capacity, how much chi Cherry could store; conversion, how quickly action, pain, discipline, and conflict became usable chi output; how violently or precisely he could release it. That was why the growth became exponential. A normal fighter gets stronger by adding force. Cherry gets stronger by multiplying force, recovery, and control together. So every time Pitborn grows, Cherry does not become a little stronger. He becomes stronger in several dimensions at once: more chi, faster chi, better control, deeper recovery, harder impact, sharper senses, less leakage. By the later stages, his body stops feeling like a body that merely channels power. It becomes a body built to breed power under pressure. The body resonance system, Pitborn grows in shadow. Cherry grows in flesh. They mirror each other. When Pitborn learns to sunder, Cherry's body learns to break rhythm. When Pitborn learns to seal, Cherry's blood learns to feed on conflict. When Pitborn learns to rush, Cherry's nerves learn to cross distance before hesitation can vote. When Pitborn opens orchard or bloom, Cherry's chi learns to rule space itself. That means Cherry's body is no longer just human in the ordinary sense. It becomes a resonance vessel. The 5 parts of Cherry's body that change: first one, blood. His blood becomes a chi bearer. It starts storing battle pressure, truth, and commitment instead of dumping them as stress. 2, spine. His spine becomes a coil engine. Every twist, step, and breath gains stored spring and predator timing. 3, nerves. His reactions stop being panic-based. His nerves become governed lightning. 4, lungs. His breath begins compressing chi instead of merely calming him. Breathing becomes power generation. 5, shadow. His shadow stops being passive. It becomes an extension of stance, hunger, and movement through Pitborn. The resonance ladder 0, 17 seeds, Bloodwake hatch Pitborn is newly born, and Cherry's body begins its first change. Cherry gains. Predator's breath. He can lower his pulse and direct chi into specific limbs on command. Pulse sight. He starts sensing fear, hesitation, lies, and weak intent as distortions in a person's rhythm. Shadow grip. His fingers, feet, and stance become unnaturally adhesive and controlled, making his movement quieter and harder to dislodge. At this stage, Cherry is not yet overwhelming. He is dangerous because he starts to notice more than other people do. This is the beginning of governed instinct. 1835 seeds, Carver frame. This is the first real body spike. Pitborn learns the law of sunder, and Cherry's body follows. Cherry gains. Sunder pulse. The first strike after stillness disrupts an enemy's rhythm, slowing their body and chi flow. Predator spine. His torso can coil and uncoil with shocking force, multiplying the power of elbows, palms, shoulders, and turning steps. Talon step. Short range bursts of movement that cut angles instantly instead of running through them. Body changes. Tendons tighten like drawn wire. Hips and shoulders align into snap force. His first movement becomes unnervingly sharp. This is where Cherry stops looking merely disciplined and starts looking predatory. 36, 53 seeds, Brandhart state. This is where Pitborn's hunger becomes nourishment. Pitborn learns seal, and Cherry's blood becomes a furnace. Cherry gains. Blood seal body. When he marks a target or commits fully to a chosen act, his strikes begin feeding him back strength, focus, and recovery. Brandhart circulation, pain, heat, and pressure stop draining him as quickly. They become fuel if he stays composed. Devourer's lung. His breath can pull scattered force back into center during conflict, preventing panic leakage. Body changes. Recovery accelerates. Bruising matters less. Stamina deepens. His pulse remains stable in violent moments. This is the stage where Cherry no longer just spends energy. He starts learning how to profit from conflict. 54, 71 seeds, onslaught nervous system. Pitborn learns rush, and Cherry's body becomes built for violent arrival. Cherry gains. Chamber rush, a straight line acceleration technique that lets him cross distance with terrifying commitment. Redline nerves. His perception sharpens during forward motion. The outside world seems to slow while he remains precise. Impact halo, the moment of collision releases a ring of chi through hips, shoulders, or fists, turning entry into domination. Body changes. Nerves stop flinching at resistance. Legs and lower back become launch mechanisms. Shoulders and ribs can absorb impact without losing posture at this stage. Cherry becomes frightening because he stops approaching like a thinker and starts arriving like a verdict. 72-89 seeds, slaughter gate physique. This is the space ruling stage. Pitborn chooses the law of ending, orchard or bloom. Cherry's body follows by learning to dominate not just force, but field. Cherry gains one of two apex expressions, orchard body. Orchard of binding, Cherry's stance creates a territory where escape lines become visible and punishable. Stake pulse, she can erupt upward through the ground, walls, or shadow lines to pin or trap a target. Boundary sense, he can feel where a person wants to flee before they move. Bloom body. Furnace skeleton, Cherry compresses chi into stillness, then detonates it through his whole frame. Bloom pulse, delayed bursts released through fists, feet, chest, or breath. Heat sovereignty, the longer he remains composed, the more dangerous the eventual release. Body changes. His body begins to affect surrounding space. His stillness becomes threatening. His movement starts imposing rules on the room. This is where Cherry stops being just a fighter. He becomes a field event. 90-107 seeds, Predator Ascendant Pitborn becomes large enough to partially overlap with Cherry. This is where flesh and spawn begin to act as one organism. Cherry gains. Spawn overlay, Pitborn can partially sheath his body, adding claws, fangs, coils, armor lines, or shadow pressure depending on alignment. Eightfold pulse, each heartbeat boosts strength, speed, perception, and recovery in rapid sequence during peak focus. Sovereign scent, Cherry can track fear, injury, dishonesty, and weakness across distance like a bloodhound with spiritual intelligence. Body changes. His shadow becomes active in combat. Branch swapping gets faster. His combat presence begins breaking weaker opponents before contact. At this stage, Cherry does not merely wield power. He wears it. 108 seeds, crown spawn, Pitheart sovereign. This is the full ascension. Pitborn crowns. Cherry forms a secondary chi core, not a new organ in a medical sense. A new power heart. It forms between sternum and lower Danneon and is called the pit heart. Cherry gains. Pit heart engine, a second pulse that stores force instead of leaking it. Zero leak state, stillness no longer wastes energy. It multiplies it. Ancestral pulse, blood memory stabilizes him, feeding discipline through lineage instead of mood. Crowned release, every branch reaches its sovereign form. Body changes. Strength, recovery, perception, and output lock in permanently above previous states. Setbacks no longer shrink him easily. He becomes calm at the center and catastrophic at the edges. This is not just stronger Cherry. This is Cherry become a true chamber-born predator. The 6 branches of chi in Cherry's body. Pitborn has 6 attribute branches. Cherry's body mirrors each one differently. 1 root chi, iron chamber body. This is the pressure branch. Body attributes: denser bones, immovable hips, crushing grip, lower center stability, extreme pain tolerance. Body techniques: stone lung, breath sinks chi into the legs and spine, making him nearly impossible to uproot. Burial palm, palm strikes that feel like walls falling. Mountain rush, a slow-looking entry that hits like a battering ram. Grave seal, marked conflict, hardened skin, bone, and tendons. This form makes Cherry feel like consequence with weight. 2 furnace chi, ember body. This is the burst branch. Body attributes: explosive fast twitch power, heat-bearing fascia, pain to force conversion, rising damage. The longer pressure builds body techniques. Kiln breath, breath superheats chi before release. Ash step, every planted step leaves stored heat behind. Furnace seal, marked targets start feeding Cherry burst output. Furnace bloom fist, delayed internal detonation through the strike. This form makes Cherry terrifying when stillness breaks. 3 venom chi, serpent body. This is the cleanest extension of anonymous snake chi body attributes. Tendon elasticity, unnatural precision. Constriction strength, toxic chi in fingertips, wrists, and gaze. Execution focused calm body techniques. Fang thread, needle-like chi entering nerves and flow points. Venom Seal, striking a marked target siphons their composure and chi. Coil Rush, forward entry that wraps movement instead of merely colliding. Red Constrictor, space control that tightens around the chosen enemy. This form makes Cherry elegant, cold, and lethal. 4 Veil Chi, Ghost Body, this is the Silence branch. Body attributes, reduced presence, noiseless gait, intent masking. Anti-scrying aura, license amplification body techniques. Quiet Pulse, disrupts speech, rhythm, and concentration. Ghost Seal marks the target by revealing their hidden motives. Shade Rush, movement that feels like a blink through shadow. Mute Orchard creates a dead sound territory that suffocates reaction. This form makes Cherry feel like punishment arriving unseen. 5 Tide Chi, Moonwater Body, this is the sustain and recovery branch. Body attributes, fluid joints, deep oxygen economy, accelerated healing, emotional cooling under pressure, long fight superiority body techniques. River Bones, body absorbs and redirects force instead of meeting it head on. Moon Seal, marked exchanges restore Cherry's core instead of draining it. River Rush, movement that slips through resistance instead of smashing it. Tidal Bloom, wave-like bursts that damage enemies while restoring Cherry's center. This form makes him nearly impossible to wear down. 6 Storm Chi, Thunder Body, this is the pursuit branch. Body attributes, lightning fast nerves, visual overclock, snap acceleration, chain impact force, relentless chase instinct body techniques, static hand, chi charged impacts that jolt multiple targets or systems. Storm Seal, every hit on a marked target builds electric momentum. Flash Rush, the fastest version of Cherry's forward entry. Skyhook Orchard, yanks targets back into range when they try to flee. This form makes Cherry look less like a man moving and more like a strike arriving. Why Cherry's growth feels exponential. The reason this gets monstrous fast is simple. Each new stage does not replace the old one. It amplifies it. So by late stages, Cherry is stacking. Better breath, better recovery, faster perception, harder entries, greater space control, less fear leakage, and a living spawn that mirrors every game. That means a late-stage Cherry is not just 10 times stronger than early Cherry. He is stronger in too many categories at once for the comparison to stay clean. His body becomes harder to wound, faster to recover, quicker to decide, calmer under pressure, more dangerous in stillness, more explosive in movement, more oppressive in presence. That is what makes him feel like he has reached new heights. Not raw strength alone, compounded sovereignty. Story-ready paragraph to paste in Cherry discovered quickly that Pitborn did not grow alone. Every blood seed the spawn devoured sent an echo pulse back through his own body, and the echo pulse multiplied him in 3 directions at once. How much chi he could hold, how fast he could turn pressure into power, and how violently or precisely he could release it. So his rise was never linear. When Pitborn learned to sunder, Cherry's pulse learned to fracture rhythm. When Pitborn learned to seal, Cherry's blood learned to feed on conflict. When Pitborn learned to rush, his nerves learned to cross distance before hesitation could speak. By the time Pitborn opened Orchard or Bloom, even the space around Cherry had begun to obey. A strong next move is Chapter 5, where Cherry first uses one branch in a real confrontation and realizes the body upgrades faster from lived consequence than from meditation alone. Chapter 5, Echo Pulse and the First Boundary. When the first blood seed settled in Pitborn, Cherry stopped waking like an ordinary man. He still opened his eyes in the same room, same ceiling, same quiet, same gray seam of morning at the edge of the curtains, but his body no longer rose out of sleep empty. Something was there before thought, not adrenaline, not dread, not the usual list of obligations waiting in the next room. Pressure. A low, steady undercurrent moving through his blood as if another rhythm had taken up residence beneath the first and was teaching his body how to listen differently. Cherry lay still and tested it. Inhale. The lungs opened farther than they should have at rest. Exhale. The breath sank lower and stayed lower, settling behind the navel instead of breaking apart in the chest. He touched the pulse in his wrist. 1 beat. Then, almost too faint to trust, a second answering pressure. Not a separate heartbeat exactly, but a return. as if the body had learned overnight that what it sent outward might now come back altered. Cherry sat up slowly. The room sharpened around him. He could hear the hum inside the walls more distinctly. The old elevator cable somewhere in the building. Water moving in pipes 3 apartments over. A shoe scraping concrete in the hallway outside, and beneath that, the emotional weather of the person making the sound, tired, irritated, late. Cherry went still. That was new. Not hearing more. Knowing more from what he heard. He stood, crossed the apartment barefoot, and entered the chamber. Pitborn was already awake. The little hound-shaped shadow sat beside the mat as if it had been expecting him, eyes lit from within by that same ember red that had taken root in Cherry's blood the day before. Not larger by much. Not enough that a stranger would have noticed, but denser. Less flicker in the ribs. More decision in the body. Cherry closed the door and stepped into the center of the room. The 6 decks held their places in silence. So did the turned clock. So did the journal, still open to the line where blood had first become entry. Pitborn rose when Cherry approached. The creature circled once through his shadow and stopped at his heels. Cherry breathed in. Immediately the room answered. The floor felt closer to his weight, as if he could put more of himself into it without collapsing down. His spine unwound and recoiled with a live, stored tension he had not had 3 days ago. The little muscles in the hands and forearms woke fully before he asked them to. Even the scar-thin cut on his thumb, already sealing, held a faint heat at the edge like a memory that had decided to remain useful. He crouched and looked at Pitborn. "So you weren't lying," he murmured. Pitborn's bright eyes gave nothing away. Cherry smiled once and sat at the low table. He opened the journal to a fresh page and wrote the first true update since the spawn had been born. The spawn does not grow alone. He paused. The next sentence came faster. Every blood seed Pitborn devours returns through me. Still too vague. Cherry crossed it out. He closed his eyes and felt for the law directly. What had changed since yesterday? Not one thing. 3. More room inside the body to hold force. Faster conversion of pressure into usable power. Cleaner release once that power had gathered. He opened his eyes and wrote again, more carefully this time. Every blood seed returns in 3 directions: capacity, conversion, output. That felt truer. He continued. Capacity, how much chi the body can hold without leaking. Conversion, how quickly fear, pain, discipline, and conflict become force. Output, how precisely or violently that force can be released. Cherry stopped and sat back. There it was, the update. What unsettled him was not that the law made sense. The chamber had been teaching him nothing but structure for days now. What unsettled him was how fast the implications arrived. If Pitborn grew, Cherry would not simply get stronger. He would get wider inside, faster in change, sharper in consequence. And if each echo pulse widened the vessel that received the next one, then nothing returned at the same size it left. That was the real law, not increase. Compounding. Cherry touched the pulse in his wrist again. 1 beat, then the answering pressure, not imagination, echo. He wrote the word beneath the rest, echo pulse. Pitborn gave a small sound from the floor, approval or hunger, Cherry couldn't tell. Probably both, Cherry said. He rose and began testing what had changed. First the breath. He inhaled, sank the air behind the navel, and let his weight drop without losing height. The legs answered immediately. Not larger, not heavier, more reliable. The ankles and knees stopped negotiating with gravity and simply took instruction. Root. He exhaled and turned through the hips. The spine uncoiled so quickly he nearly over-rotated. Cherry caught himself and smiled again, this time without humor. The body had begun learning before he had. Serpent. He lifted one hand, held still for a full breath, then let the palm shoot out and stop inches short of the wall. The strike was quiet. The air in front of his fingers wasn't. A faint disturbance rippled through it, as if stillness had made the release denser than movement alone should have. Sunder. Cherry stood there for a second, hand hovering in the charged silence. Pitborn's tail flicked once. Not mastered. Not even close. But present. His phone buzzed in the next room. Cherry did not break the posture immediately. That mattered. He let the breath complete its cycle, lowered the hand, touched his pulse once, then walked out of the chamber and checked the screen. Morrow. One message. Read them. Good. They have blood in them. Keep going. Cherry stared at the text longer than the sentence deserved. Not because it was flattering, because it wasn't. Blood in Morrow's mouth meant Risk had finally made it onto the page. Meant the language had stopped protecting the writer from the thing being written. Cherry typed back, I found the next law. The reply came fast. Good. Don't explain it to me yet. Earn it. Cherry barked one short laugh. Of course. He slid the phone into his pocket and glanced toward the hall closet. He needed another notebook, more paper, more tea, normal things, ordinary solvable errands. Good. The chamber had to keep learning the day. By the time he stepped outside, the city had fully entered itself. Wet sidewalks drying under a pale sun. Delivery vans blocking half lanes. A woman arguing into a headset with the calm fury of someone who had run out of patience before breakfast. Kids late for school. A man in paint-speckled work boots smoking too fast near the corner store, pulse running hot with money trouble and no sleep. Cherry felt all of it, not as thoughts, as rhythms. The world had become louder in one direction and quieter in another. Less surface, more signal. He moved through it carefully, refusing the urge to stare. That mattered too. A gift became theft the second it turned voyeur. At the crosswalk, Cherry stilled for one breath and let the crowd move around him. Fear had a tempo. Dishonesty had one too. So did urgency, lust, hunger, embarrassment, grief. He could not read minds. He could read leakage. That was enough to make the city feel suddenly made of cracked vessels. Pitborn moved with him inside the shadow cast by his body. Not visible in full daylight unless a person was already sensitive enough to regret noticing. But Cherry felt every step the creature took as a faint answering intelligence at the edge of his own movement. When he reached the secondhand shop, the front door was half shut. The sign read open, but not convincingly. Cherry slowed. Before his hand reached the handle, he felt it. Tension in the room. Not abstract. Specific. One pulse old and angry. One pulse younger, meaner, running too fast under the skin. One pulse steady in the way of someone refusing fear because fear would be useful to the wrong people. The cashier. Cherry pushed the door open. The bell gave one dry, unwilling ring. Insel shop looked the same and not the same in. Same shelves. Same dust gold light. Same leaning towers of used books and candle jars and forgotten lives in frames. But at the counter stood two men who did not belong there. One in a tan jacket that fit like bad intent. Thick hands. Nose broken once, maybe twice. His posture said he enjoyed rooms smaller than his temper. The other younger, leaner, in a black cap and city sneakers too clean for honest work. He was the dangerous one. Not because he looked harder. Because his pulse ran light, too little conscience for the amount of attention in his eyes. The cashier stood behind the register, glasses low on her nose, expression flat as stone. She looked up when Cherry entered. For a fraction of a second, something passed between them. Recognition, not of identity, of timing. Tan jacket turned first. We're closed, he said. The sign in the window still said open. Cherry looked at it, then back at him. No, Cherry said. You're hoping you are. The younger man smiled without warmth. There he is, he said. The room tightened. Cherry did not ask how they knew. The answer was already present in the room. The crate under the table. The 6 decks. Somebody had noticed their absence and wanted the buyer more than the inventory. Tan jacket took one slow step toward Cherry. You bought some things from here, he said. Cherry let his bag settle against his hip and did not move farther into the room. I buy a lot of things, he said. Don't do that, said the younger man. Do what? Talk like you don't know what we mean. The cashier said without looking at either of them. I told you already. I don't keep customer information. Tan jacket ignored her. We're trying to be respectful. Cherry almost smiled. There it was. The lie, thin, rehearsed, smelling faintly of borrowed authority. Pitborn stirred at his heels. Cherry felt the first true test of the portable chamber arrive in full. Not on the mat. Not in theory. Here, a room with too many breakable things. An old woman holding her line behind the counter. two men who had mistaken intimidation for jurisdiction. 3 breaths, Cherry told himself. He took them. On the first, the jaw loosened. On the second, the breath sank. On the third, he named the leak. Not fear. Useful if governed. Tan Jacket mistook the stillness for hesitation. He stepped in and reached for Cherry's shoulder. Cherry did not step back. He let the hand come. Then he moved. The strike was almost nothing to watch. A short turn through the hips, palm cutting inward under the man's reaching arm. 2 fingers brushing the tendon at the wrist, then the heel of the hand landing square in the sternum with a sound no louder than a book being closed. But the effect was wrong. Tan Jacket's body lost its rhythm instantly. Not pain first, rhythm. His next step forgot how to complete itself. The shoulder he had meant to drive forward stalled. The knee on the same side buckled half an inch out of sequence. Confusion hit his face before hurt did. Cherry felt it too. The stillness before the strike had condensed something. The release had not merely landed. It had interrupted. Sunder. Pitborn flashed through the man's shadow and snapped once at his ankle. No wound. No torn flesh. Just a dark red distortion that traveled up the leg like a bad signal through old wiring. Tan Jacket stumbled sideways into a shelf of cookbooks and swore. The younger man moved fast. Too fast for an ordinary distraction to hold him. He came in from the left with a folding knife already open, low, and practical, the kind used by people who preferred explanation after damage. Cherry saw the line of attack before the shoulder finished forming it. Echo pulse, capacity, conversion, output. The body had more room to stay calm. The calm became speed. The speed became angle. Cherry slipped inside the knife hand. His left wrist caught the attacker's forearm. His right hand darted forward, not striking hard but exactly, 2 knuckles driving into the live nerve just above the wrist crease. The knife clattered to the floor. The younger man hissed and tried to recover with his offhand, elbow angling for Cherry's ribs. It landed, hard enough to matter. For 1 clean second, pain bloomed. Then something impossible happened. It did not drain him. It converted. A blood seed dropped through Cherry's shadow and into Pitborn's waiting mouth. The creature swallowed. The return hit instantly. His ribs stopped screaming and started informing. The pain flattened into heat. The heat folded into the breath, and the breath drove straight down behind the navel like fuel entering a furnace built lower than his old body had known how to build one. Cherry's eyes widened a fraction. Not because he was hurt, because he was learning. The spawn did not grow alone. Every fed act returned sharpened. The younger man tried to wrench free. Cherry's hand tightened. Not brute strength. Alignment. His spine coiled. The shoulder dropped. The hips turned. The other man's balance vanished without understanding why. Cherry sent him down across the edge of a low table in a controlled spill of limbs and splintering cheap wood. Not theatrical. Efficient. Tan Jacket recovered enough to charge. This time Cherry saw the whole thing before it happened. The bad knee compensating. The right shoulder loading too early. The old habit of leading with size because size had solved enough problems to become personality. Cherry stood absolutely still. Tan Jacket crossed the distance. For 1 impossible second, the room slowed around the line of his arrival. Cherry stepped in, not away. The movement was short enough to be rude. Shoulder met chest. Hip drove through thigh. 1 hand caught fabric, the other struck once beneath the jaw, not with full force, but with the authority of a body that had begun deciding not to waste motion. Tan Jacket left the floor, only for a heartbeat, long enough to understand that weight had stopped being an argument. He crashed backward into the counter, knocking over a tin rack of postcards and a jar of pens. The whole shop rang with small impacts. The cashier never flinched. Cherry felt another blood seed fall, not from the strike, from the vow inside it. He had stepped in. He had held. He had not performed. Pitborn devoured the seed. The second echo pulse came back larger than the first. That was the part that nearly unsettled him. It did not repeat. It multiplied. The first return had given him recovery. The second struck a body already more capable of receiving it, and so it widened him further. His lungs seemed to open from behind. The tendons in his legs drew tight and ready. Even his eyesight clarified at the edges, making every exit line in the room suddenly obvious. Nothing returned at the size it left. That was the exponential law. The younger man got to one knee and looked up at Cherry with the expression people wear when the world stops agreeing with their assumptions. "What the hell are you?" Cherry did not answer immediately. Pitborn stood in the dark between them now, barely visible, ribs lit like coals under glass. The younger man could not fully see it, but some animal part of him could. His pulse spiked. Cherry heard it. He heard the fear under it too, not of pain, but of miscalculation, of having mistaken a quiet room for an undefended one. "Leave," Cherry said. Tan Jacket spat blood into his own beard and pushed off the counter. "You think this is over?" Cherry took one step forward. Pitborn moved with him. The room changed. No one outside the chamber would have named it chi. They would have named it pressure or menace or the sudden wrongness of the air before violence escalates. But Cherry knew better. The serpent branch had not fully opened, nor veil nor root. Still, all three stood at the edge of him. His shadow lengthened half an inch against the floorboards. The air near his hands felt fine and sharp. The distance between the men and the door narrowed without physically changing. Boundary. Not killing. Not chasing. Rule. "If you come back here," Cherry said quietly, "or ask her about me again, the next time won't be confusing." Silence held for half a breath. Then the younger man grabbed Tan Jacket by the sleeve. Not from loyalty. From survival. "Let's go." Tan Jacket resisted just long enough to lose face, then gave in because his nervous system had already voted. They backed toward the door, eyes never fully leaving Cherry's. The bell gave another dry ring when they exited. Then they were gone. The shop settled by degrees. A book slid off a tilted stack somewhere in the back and landed flat with a tired thump. Cherry stood still until his pulse came down on purpose, not by accident. Pitborn circled once through his shadow, then sat, hungry still, but steadier. The cashier bent, picked up the fallen knife with 2 fingers, and dropped it behind the counter without comment. Then she looked at Cherry over the rim of her glasses. "So," she said. One of them bit back. Cherry let out a breath that could have been a laugh if it had more room in it. "You can see him?" She gave him a look that made the question feel young. "I saw the crate before you did, too." "Fair enough." Cherry crouched, righted the broken little table, and began gathering scattered postcards into a pile. The cashier watched him for a moment, then said, "They weren't just after the decks." "I know. They wanted the buyer's name." "I know that, too." Cherry stacked the last postcard and set it on the counter. She nodded once. "Then you should know one more thing." Her voice lowered. "Men like that don't usually work for themselves. They work for people whose sacred things are inventory and thresholds are assets." Cherry felt the words in the sternum more than the ear. "Collectors," he said. "Worse," she said. "Organizers." He looked at her. She pushed her glasses up and gave him the same unreadable half-smile she'd worn the day he found the 6 boxes. "You didn't just buy books," she said. "You accepted a room that opens both ways." Cherry glanced down at the shadow at his feet. Pitborn's ribs glowed once, faintly. "I was starting to figure that out." She reached beneath the counter, pulled out a plain black notebook with no label on it, and set it on the wood between them. "No charge," she said. Cherry frowned. "I can pay for a notebook." "That isn't what you're paying for." He let that pass. After a beat, he took the notebook. The cover was warm from wherever she had kept it. At the door, he paused. "Why didn't you tell them anything?" The cashier snorted softly. "Because not everything that comes through a room belongs to the market." She glanced toward his shadow, then back to his face. "And because I wanted to see whether you had teeth." Cherry nodded once. "Apparently I do." "Apparently," she said. Outside, the city had not changed at all. That always impressed him after moments like this. The buses still ran late. The lights still hit the same windows. Someone across the street still cursed at a parking meter as if machines responded to shame. Cherry walked home with the new notebook under one arm and a body that no longer fit the morning he had started in. On the corner outside his building, he stopped beneath the shade of a dead-limbed tree and closed his eyes for one measured breath. He felt for the changes. The lungs held more. The breath dropped faster. The spine coiled more cleanly. The nerves had stopped mistaking surprise for danger. Pain, when remembered from the elbow in his ribs, no longer registered as damage first. It registered as converted instruction. And under all of it, pit-born, denser, greedy, learning. Cherry touched the pulse in his wrist. One beat, then the answer. Stronger now. He understood something on that sidewalk he had not fully understood in the chamber. The echo pulse did not simply reward action. It rewarded governed action. If he fed pit-born chaos, he might get force back, but not structure. If he fed it performance, the power would come jagged. If he fed it cruelty, the body might grow faster than the man governing it. But if he fed it vows kept under pressure, truth honored without spectacle, protection chosen cleanly, then what came back would not just be strength. It would be alignment made bodily. Cherry opened his eyes. By the time he entered the chamber again, the chapter title was already waiting. He sat, opened the new notebook, and wrote it across the first page. Chapter 5, Echo Pulse, and the first boundary then beneath it. The first real increase did not arrive because I fought. It arrived because I held the line without leaving myself. He wrote until the language caught up to the body. About capacity, about conversion, about output, about how every blood seed widened the vessel that received the next one, making growth compounding rather than linear. About how the spawn's hunger had become a mirror. About how pain, once governed, stopped being a tax and started becoming material. Pit-born lay in his shadow while he wrote, eyes half closed, listening. When Cherry finished the page, a third blood seed fell. Not from conflict, from articulation, from making the law clear enough to be carried. Pit-born devoured it. The echo pulse that came back made his hand tighten around the pen, so suddenly he had to set it down and laugh once into the empty room. Right, he said softly. So even writing counts. Pit-born opened one bright eye. Of course it did. The chamber did not care whether the consequence arrived through a strike, a boundary, a page, or a vow. It cared whether it was real enough to feed on. Cherry looked toward the turned clock, then toward the 6 decks, then back to the sentence on the page. The city had drawn first blood. It had also fed him. His phone buzzed once in the next room. Cherry rose, checked it, and found a new message from Morrow. The pages made someone nervous. Good sign. Meeting tomorrow? Cherry looked down at Pit-born. The little creature rose soundlessly from his shadow, ribs lit in the dim room like a row of patient coals. Tomorrow. Another threshold. Another room. Another chance to find out what the chamber could carry without splitting. Cherry typed one word. Yes. Then he returned to the mat, touched the pulse in his wrist, felt the answering pressure beneath it, and smiled with less softness than he used to. The chamber was no longer teaching him how to survive solitude. It was teaching him how to compound. Chapter 4, Blood Memory and the Birth of Pit-born Cherry had written tomorrow. Blood memory at the bottom of the page, as if the sentence belonged to a braver version of himself. On the 4th morning, the chamber answered before he touched the latch. The apartment was still dark enough to feel uncommitted. No traffic yet thick in the street. No hallway doors slamming. No phone lit with the old world's demands. Just the low blue before day and the familiar pull in Cherry's chest that had begun, over the last 3 mornings, to feel less like routine and more like appointment. He entered barefoot, closed the door behind him, and stood in the center of the room. The chamber held. Mat centered. Low table waiting. Turned clock blind to the hour. Journal open where he had left it. The 6 decks in their stations like a council that did not need to introduce itself anymore. World shamans before him. Spirit animals at the left. What's the T at the right? Angel number above. Messages from the universe near the foot of the mat. Messages of cosmic at his back. Cherry touched his pulse. Steady. Too steady almost. Like a room before weather. He sat, opened the journal to yesterday's final page, and looked at the line again. A real practice is not proven by how deep it feels in solitude. It is proven by what remains intact when the door opens. Below it, tomorrow, blood memory. He nodded once at the sentence as though accepting a challenge from his own hand, then reached for the world shaman's guidebook. If the next chapter was going to ask where the lifestyle came from, then he needed to stop writing as if he had invented himself in a vacuum. That had always been one of the quieter lies. Not the loud kind. Not the kind what's the tea would slap out of a person in one pull. A more disciplined lie. A prettier one. The lie of self-creation. The lie of private strength arrived at by private genius. The lie that the chamber had begun with him. Cherry turned the first page, then another. On the third, the paper bit him. A thin, clean cut across the side of his thumb. He hissed once, more surprised than hurt, and pulled his hand back. A bead of blood gathered immediately, bright and exact in the dim room. For a second, he almost laughed. Of course, the old book asked a price. Then the drop fell. Not to the floor, to the journal. It landed on the page beneath yesterday's closing line and should have spread there, a small red stain in the fibers. Instead, it tightened. Cherry went still. The blood drew inward, condensing into itself as if the page had become a small gravity well. The red darkened at the center. The air in the chamber changed. Not. Prologue. When Cherry found the six before the cards, before the boxes, before the chamber learned to speak back, Anonymous Cherry already lived by discipline, not the loud kind, not the kind that announces itself in public and dies in private. The time chamber lifestyle began as a room, a routine, and a refusal. A room with dim walls and a bare floor. A routine built from breath, stillness, tea, movement, writing, action. A refusal to let the world decide the pace of the spirit. Cherry had built the chamber slowly, like someone hiding a temple inside an ordinary life. There was no throne in it, no neon sign, no mirror for vanity, no altar crowded with things that looked powerful but did nothing. There was only a mat, a journal, a kettle, a low table, a clock turned away from the body, and enough silence to hear a heartbeat choose itself. Outside that room, time acted like an enemy. Inside it, time could be bent. That was the whole philosophy. 1 hour inside the chamber had to become more real than 6 hours outside it. A single deliberate act had to outweigh a day of reaction. Breath had to come before opinion. Posture before panic. Movement before performance. Truth before mood. Cherry called it a lifestyle because it could not stay in the room. If it stayed in the room, it was decoration. The chamber had to follow into speech, money, hunger, conflict, sleep, love, and work. Otherwise, it was just another costume worn by people too afraid to change. So Cherry trained. Pulse first, breath second, body third, mind fourth, action last. On certain mornings, Cherry practiced the hidden coil, the serpent method of gathering force without spilling it. Feet rooted. Jaw loose, spine rolling like a quiet wave, breath descending from forehead to throat, from throat to heart, from heart to belly. The point was not to become dramatic. The point was to stop leaking. Anonymous snake chi, Cherry wrote once in the journal, is not about striking. It is about becoming impossible to scatter. That sentence stayed, but even the chamber, in all its severity, had a missing wall. Cherry could train in silence, but sometimes silence did not answer. Cherry could hold stillness, but stillness did not always explain what the day was asking for. Some mornings the body was ready, the tea was hot, the notebook open, the breath low, and yet the path ahead still felt blurred, like a window breathing fog from both sides. That was the state Cherry was in the day the 6 boxes appeared. It was late afternoon, rain beginning without warning, the kind that darkens the street before anyone admits the weather has changed. Cherry had stepped into a cramped second-hand shop to avoid getting soaked. The place smelled like dust, cedar, paper, and old cloth, like forgotten things that had survived because nobody had decided what to do with them. There were shelves leaning under the weight of cookbooks, cracked hardcovers, old astrology manuals, out-of-season planners, candle jars, half-burned incense, and photographs of strangers whose names had come loose from memory. Cherry wasn't looking for anything sacred. Just shelter, maybe tea, maybe a small blank notebook if the price was right. A few minutes in, Cherry turned a corner too sharply, caught a boot against a low wooden crate tucked beneath a display table, and stumbled. The crate tipped. Its contents slid out across the floor in a dark, soft scatter. Cherry crouched instinctively to gather them, and that was when the room changed. The first box was deep blue-black, almost night-colored, and on it a woman with dark hair touched her forehead as though opening a hidden eye. Light glowed at the brow. Light glowed again at the chest. Above and below her were words that seemed less like a title than an announcement. World Shaman's Oracle. Cherry held it a second too long. The second box carried a wolf's face emerging from shadow and leaves, eyes fixed, patient, almost too alive for cardboard. Spirit animals. Journey into the wild. The third was pale minimal, almost innocent if not for the way it stared back with perfect bluntness. What's the tea? A teapot. A cup, a question that sounded simple and dangerous at the same time. Beneath the others were 3 smaller decks, each with a different pressure in the hand. The black-green one with the translucent winged figure, angel number oracle cards. The purple one with the glowing edge of a planet and tiny figures beneath an impossible sky, messages from the universe oracle cards. And the last dark and star-stormed, a hooded figure seated beneath cosmic fire, messages of cosmic oracle cards. Cherry knelt there in the thin stripe of shop light, rain tapping the window, boxes spread over the floor like 6 doors no one had meant to open at once. They did not feel random. That was the first unsettling thing. The second was that each box seemed to answer a lack Cherry had never fully named. World shamans felt like witness, old medicine, older than trend, older than self-improvement, older than the need to be seen changing. Spirit animals felt like body memory, instinct tracking, muscle timing, movement without self-betrayal. What's the tea felt like the blade, no smoke, no halo, just the hot truth poured plain enough to burn. Angel number felt like rhythm, pattern, recurrence, the mathematics of being nudged by something beyond mood. Messages from the universe felt like reassurance without softness, like being corrected by a sky that loved precision. Messages of cosmic felt like scale, the reminder that the self was both tiny and capable of carrying something vast. Cherry stacked them carefully. An elderly cashier at the front looked up over a pair of thin glasses and gave a slow smile that didn't quite reach sentimentality. Funny, she said. Those sat there for months. Nobody touched them. Cherry glanced down at the boxes in both hands. They were under the table, Cherry said. The cashier shrugged as if that changed nothing. Still found you. Cherry bought all 6. By the time Cherry got home, the rain had deepened into evening. The apartment was quiet. The chamber door stood half open down the hall, its darkness waiting in the same way it always waited, without pressure, without persuasion, like a place that would never chase, but would always receive. Cherry carried the boxes in one at a time, set the kettle on, wiped the low table clean, turned the clock fully toward the wall, then stood in the center of the room and looked at the chamber as if seeing its unfinished blueprint for the first time. The time chamber lifestyle had always been about compression, less distraction, more presence, less drift, more choice. But now Cherry understood that the chamber could become more than a forge. It could become a map. Cherry placed World Shaman's Oracle directly ahead of the mat where the eyes naturally fell. That would be the witness position, the medicine seat, the place of elder sight. Spirit animals went to the left, near heart level. That would be the instinct gate, the body law, the moving intelligence. What's the tea went to the right. Truth belonged beside action, not above it. Angel number was set on the shelf just above eye level, where it could look down into the room like a pattern waiting to be noticed. Messages from the universe was placed near the foot of the mat, at the horizon line of the body, where guidance could arrive like a letter placed beneath a door. Messages of cosmic was set behind the mat, at Cherry's back, where the unseen and the immense could keep their pressure without turning the whole ritual into spectacle. Then Cherry stepped back. For a moment nothing happened, just tea warming, rain falling, the tiny sounds of a home being itself. Then the room changed the way a room changes when purpose enters it. Not brighter, not haunted, organized. Cherry felt it in the sternum first, a click like a lock deciding to trust a key. The chamber was no longer only a place to strip away noise. It had become a 6-walled method of receiving, embodying, discerning, timing, listening, and enduring. The lifestyle had found its mythology. The training had found its witnesses. Cherry sat cross-legged on the mat and opened the journal. On a fresh page, Cherry wrote, Time Chamber, Expanded Form Shaman for Root, Animal for Motion, T for Truth, Number for Timing, Universe for Message, Cosmic for Scale. Cherry stared at the lines, then added one more beneath them. The chamber is no longer a room. It is a council. The tea was ready. Cherry poured it into a plain cup and let the steam rise between body and boxes. In the old days, that would have been the start. Tea, breath, training, task. Now there was a threshold to cross first. Cherry touched the pulse at the wrist. Slow, present, not calm exactly, more like gathered. Then Cherry spoke aloud to the room for the first time in weeks. I built this chamber to protect my time, Cherry said softly. Now let it teach me what time is for. Something in that sentence landed. Not in the air, in the body. Cherry closed the eyes and felt the old serpent practice stir beneath the ribs, not striking, not threatening, only coiling deeper, as if recognizing that the chamber finally had the right architecture to hold it. The hidden force no longer had to live in a blank room. It had walls now, direction now, sky now. When Cherry opened the eyes again, the 6 boxes seemed less like objects and more like sealed chapters waiting to be entered, not read. Entered. That night no cards were pulled. That was the first discipline of the new era. Cherry did not rush the meeting just because the door had opened. Instead, Cherry sat in the center of the 6 and listened to the rain until it sounded like pages turning somewhere inside the walls. Then Cherry drank the tea, finished the breath work, and wrote a final line before closing the journal. Tomorrow, the chamber begins speaking. Outside, the city kept wasting its hours. Inside, anonymous Cherry had found the books that would turn the time chamber lifestyle into a living saga. Chapter 1. The rule of first light. Cherry woke before the alarm, before the sky had chosen a color, before the city remembered its own noise. For a few seconds there was only the dark ceiling, the slow rise of breath, and the feeling that something had already arrived and was waiting patiently in the next room. Then Cherry remembered the 6 boxes, the chamber, the sentence written at the bottom of the page the night before. Tomorrow, the chamber begins speaking. Cherry sat up. No phone, no checking the hour for permission, no drifting into other people's weather before touching the day. That had always been one of the chamber laws. Protect the first light, even when the light had not yet appeared. Cherry washed hands in cold water, tied back loose hair, filled the kettle, and moved barefoot through the apartment with the care of someone entering a place that could hear intention before sound. Outside, the rain had passed. The windows held that strange after-dark clarity that comes when the world has been rinsed, but not forgiven. The chamber door was still half open. Inside, the room waited exactly as Cherry had left it. Mat centered, low table clean, journal closed, clock turned to the wall. The 6 decks placed like stations in a private cosmology. World shamans ahead, spirit animals to the left. What's the T to the right? Angel number above. Messages from the universe at the horizon of the mat. Messages of cosmic behind, like a pressure too large to fit in front. Cherry stepped into the center and stopped. There it was again, that click in the sternum, quiet but unmistakable, as if the body itself recognized an architecture the mind had only started to understand. Before the chamber had become a council, it had been a forge. Now it was both. Cherry knelt at the low table, opened the journal to a fresh page, and wrote the date without checking whether it mattered to anyone else. Beneath it, slowly, carefully, Cherry wrote the laws of the expanded chamber. Not many, only what could survive repetition. No second pulls, no asking what I already know, no interpretation that flatters cowardice, no leaving the chamber without one real act, no using spirit to avoid life. Cherry stopped there. That was enough. Too many laws became theater. Too few became mood. The kettle clicked softly in the next room. Cherry let it wait. This first part had to happen without comfort in the hand. Standing again, Cherry placed 2 fingers at the wrist. The pulse was steady, but not gentle. It carried anticipation the way a bow carries an arrow before the release, drawn, quiet, refusing waste. Cherry closed the eyes, inhaled to the brow, exhaled to the throat, inhaled to the chest, exhaled to the belly. Again. The old serpent method uncoiled in the body almost immediately, not dramatic, not mystical, simply precise. The breath descended, the jaw loosened. The spine felt less like a column and more like a listening instrument. By the 7th breath, Cherry could feel the room settle around the body, rather than the body straining to occupy the room. Only then did Cherry sit on the mat and reach for the first deck. World Shaman's oracle felt heavier than cardboard should feel. Not physically, in principle. Cherry held the box with both hands for a moment before opening it, as if greeting a person too old to rush. The cards slid free with a soft, clean sound. The guidebook lay beneath them like a second pulse. Cherry did not open the booklet first. This morning was not for study. It was for meeting. The cards moved slowly in Cherry's hands. Not shuffled for randomness exactly, but turned, mixed, breathed into until they stopped feeling like arranged objects and started feeling like a language, looking for where to land. Then one card loosened at the edge and slipped down into Cherry's lap face up. Cherry looked, an elder, not young, not ornamental, not softened for comfort. A face marked by weather and ceremony. A gaze that did not invite belief so much as demand honesty. Around the figure were signs of land and element, smoke or mist, the edge of gold, a shape that could have been flame or dawn, depending on who was looking. Cherry did not need the title first. The message hit before the name could. Remember who stands behind you when you enter sacred work. The room changed, not visually, in posture. Cherry's back straightened as if a line of unseen hands had settled there, not pushing, simply present. Suddenly, the chamber felt less like a private invention and more like a room being joined by others. The women in Cherry's family, who had held everything together without the courtesy of applause. The dead who had survived in practical ways, not poetic ones. The unnamed ones in every bloodline and neighborhood who had built small sanctuaries out of kitchens, stoops, notebooks, prayer, recipes, work, silence, warning, and refusal. Cherry lowered the forehead to the mat, not in worship, in acknowledgement. I am not self-made, Cherry said into the woven fibers. The words sounded plain, good. Plain words held better. When Cherry sat back up, the chamber no longer felt empty. It felt witnessed. That was enough for the first deck. Cherry placed the shaman card at the front edge of the mat and reached left. Spirit animals. The wolf on the box had looked patient in the shop. Here, in the dim early light of the chamber, patience felt like a harder thing, not the absence of urgency, but its mastery. Cherry opened the deck and shuffled standing this time. That felt right. Movement belonged to this one. The first card turned in Cherry's hand before it fully cleared the deck. Fur, eyes, a body shaped for endurance rather than spectacle. Not charging, not fleeing. Tracking. Cherry exhaled once through the nose. Of course. The message came with the image, lean and exact. Stop circling your own life. Track it. Cherry had the strange and immediate feeling of being found out. For months, the chamber had protected Cherry from distraction. Yes, but protection had a shadow side. Protection could harden into perimeter. Perimeter could become habit. Habit could become a beautiful form of delay. The animal card did not accuse. It narrowed. Track the actual trail. Follow what is living. Stop patrolling the same internal forest as if movement itself were proof of progress. Cherry set the animal card beside the shaman card, then stood and crossed the room in 7 slow steps. Heel, ball, toe, breathe. Pause. Again. Each step felt louder than it sounded. The body, under the gaze of the wolf, became honest in a way mirrors never accomplished. There was no room for performance here. Either a step landed cleanly or it didn't. Either the body knew where it was going or it was pretending to know. By the 7th step, Cherry could feel the old leak clearly, too much inward circling. Too much preparation mistaken for arrival. Cherry turned back to the mat and reached right. The pale box of What's the Tea looked almost harmless between the darker decks. Cherry knew better already. The cards were lighter, quicker in the hands, almost eager. The first one that came up had only a few words on it, and Cherry felt the heat in the chest before fully reading them. Not because the card was cruel, because it was accurate. It said, in its own sharp little way, what the chamber had been building toward for months. You've been hiding behind preparation. Cherry stared. The sentence did not physically exist on the card in that exact form, but it existed in the meaning so cleanly it may as well have been printed there. Not unprepared, not lazy, not unserious. Hiding behind preparation. A more respectable form of fear. Cherry almost laughed, which would have been easier than letting the truth land. Instead, Cherry let it land. The chamber lifestyle had made Cherry stronger, yes, more deliberate, less available to nonsense, more able to hear the body under the static. But strength had become a place to stay. Discipline had become a place to postpone exposure. The chamber had not failed. It had simply matured to the point where it could no longer be used as a shelter from beginning. Cherry placed the tea card down with more care than the first two. The chamber was speaking now, and it was not speaking for comfort. Good. Comfort had never been the point. Cherry looked up toward the shelf and reached for the black-green box. Angel number oracle cards. These shuffled differently, with a crispness that made Cherry think of doors and thresholds and elevator numbers glowing in dark hallways. When the card came, the repeating digits struck before meaning did. Order, echo, recurrence, pattern speaking through multiplication. Cherry felt a chill move lightly across the shoulders. The stove clock in the kitchen, glimpsed on the way in, had flashed the same repeating structure. Cherry hadn't wanted to make too much of it. Now the deck answered with the same architecture. Not coincidence exactly. Not miracle either. Instruction. Foundation is already under you. Stop waiting for the perfect sign to begin. Cherry smiled then, but without softness. This was how the chamber preferred to bless, by removing excuses. The number card was set above the others, like a hinge. Then came the purple deck. Messages from the universe felt warmer in the hands than the others, which was ridiculous, but true. Cherry opened it, and the first card arrived almost without shuffling, as if it had been waiting near the top with practiced restraint. The message was not sentimental. That relieved Cherry immediately. No syrup, no false halo, just a line that landed in the body like a hand at the center of the back. You do not need more permission than the work itself. Cherry read it twice. Somewhere in the apartment, the kettle clicked a second time, impatient now. Still Cherry did not move. The words had gone beyond thought and into structure. Something in them locked with the tea card and the number card and made a shape. No more hiding behind preparation. No more waiting for a cleaner omen. No more asking the sky to approve what the spine had already agreed to. Only one deck remained. Cherry reached behind without turning first, fingers finding the dark box by touch. Messages of cosmic. This one came cold. Not literally. Vastly. The card Cherry drew from it was all darkness edged in impossible color, like the inside of a storm that had learned how to think. There was no comfort in the image, but there was scale. The kind that made private fear feel both ridiculous and understandable at once. Cherry sat very still. The message did not come as a sentence at first. It came as perspective. The chamber is small. The work is not. Then the sentence formed. If you can hold stillness in a room, learn to hold it in destiny. Cherry let out a breath that seemed to start behind the ribs. There it was. Not a reading. A command structure. 6 decks, 6 corrections, 6 walls of the chamber now speaking in one voice. Root. Track. Tell the truth, read the pattern, take the message, endure the scale. Cherry looked at the 6 cards arranged before the mat and felt something rare and hard settle into place. Not certainty. Certainty was brittle. This was alignment, a different substance entirely. Cherry finally rose, went to the kitchen, poured tea into the plain white cup, and carried it back carefully with both hands. Steam lifted between body and cards, turning the room briefly into something temple-like before the thought could become self-important. Cherry set the cup down, returned to the mat, and began the first integrated form. Forehead to floor for the unseen ones. 7 tracked steps for the animal. 3 hissed exhales for the truth. 4 measured breaths under the number. 1 upright pause beneath the universe's instruction. 9 heartbeats of stillness under the cosmic sentence. By the end of it, the chamber felt less like a room than a sealed hour cut out of ordinary time and sharpened into purpose. Cherry sat with tea and journal. This was where the old routine would once have ended. Insight gathered, body steadied, perhaps a page of notes, perhaps a line to remember. Not anymore. The law was clear. No leaving the chamber without one real act. Cherry uncapped the pen. For a moment the page stayed white. Not because there was nothing to say, because the body recognized the threshold for what it was. Once this next thing was written, the chamber would no longer be a place Cherry visited for maintenance. It would become a place that demanded consequence. Cherry wrote anyway, not a reflection, not a summary, a beginning. This chamber was built to rescue time from waste. Then it taught me that time is not what must be rescued. Attention is, truth is, action is. Cherry stopped and looked at the lines. The tea card burned quietly at the edge of vision, hiding behind preparation. Not anymore. Cherry turned the page and wrote a title across the next one in slow, unornamented letters. The Time Chamber Lifestyle below it. Book 1. The hidden coil. The room went so still Cherry could hear the tea cooling. That was the act, not planning the book. Beginning it, not training for the life, entering it. Cherry closed the journal, placed one hand over the lower belly, the other over the sternum, and touched the pulse one last time. Steadier now, not calmer, committed. Outside the chamber, somewhere in the apartment, the phone began to vibrate across a hard surface, once, then again, then a third time, persistent enough to belong to the old world. Cherry listened to it without moving. Then, for the first time in a long time, smiled. Wait, Cherry said softly to whatever was calling. The chamber had spoken first. Chapter 2. The door must follow the phone vibrated 3 more times before Cherry touched it. Not because discipline required theatrics. Because discipline required sequence. Tea first. Journal closed. Cards gathered, but not returned to their boxes yet. Cherry left them face up in their positions around the mat, a temporary constellation the room was still thinking through. The chamber smelled faintly of steam, cedar, and the metallic edge that comes after a truth has been spoken aloud. Only then did Cherry rise, bare feet on the floorboards, shoulders loose, pulse steady. By the time Cherry stepped into the kitchen, the vibration had stopped. The phone lay face up on the counter now, screen gone dark, reflecting only the pale gray of morning. Cherry looked at it for a full breath before picking it up. 1 missed call, 2 messages, 1 email, all from the same source. Morrow, Vale. Cherry stood very still. Morrow. There were names that belonged to the old life, and names that belonged to the life before that. Morrow belonged to the borderland between them, back when Cherry had first started making language sharp enough to cut with, back when ideas had still been larger than fear, but not yet stronger than it. Morrow had been the only person who ever saw the early notebooks and didn't mistake them for private therapy or pretty fragments. Morrow had read Cherry's pages the way a blacksmith listens to metal, not for comfort, but for tensile strength. That had been years ago, before the drift, before Cherry turned inward hard enough to build the chamber, before every unfinished thing started hiding behind the noble language of incubation. Cherry unlocked the screen. The voicemail transcript was short. Call me back. I found something that belongs to you. The first text had come 6 minutes earlier. Cleaning out old files. Found your old proposal. The second, 1 minute after that, you were on to something. Don't disappear again. Cherry read the last line twice. The chamber's reading from dawn moved up through the body like a second pulse. No second pulse. No interpretation that flatters cowardice. No leaving the chamber without one real act. Cherry set the phone down, then picked it back up again. The email subject line was simple. Time chamber that made something in Cherry's stomach turn over. Not panic. Recognition. Cherry opened it. Inside was an attachment titled, Time Chamber Draft 01 below it. One line from Morrow. You gave this to me 3 years ago and said not yet. I think you meant, I'm scared it's real. Cherry leaned one hand against the counter. Outside, the washed gray morning had begun to fill with ordinary sound, tires hissing on wet pavement, a bus sighing at the stop, somebody dragging a trash bin over concrete. The city was clocking in. The world was doing what it always did, making urgency look like fate. Inside, the chamber behind Cherry remained silent. Not empty. Silent. A good silence. One that expected a response. Cherry opened the attachment. It was real. Not an outline, not a fantasy sketch, not a folder of disconnected language dressed up as intention. A book proposal. Page after page. Not as strong as it could have been. Not as sharp as what Cherry could write now. But alive, terribly alive, which was worse, because aliveness could indict a person more than failure ever could. There it was in a former voice, younger and less disciplined, but somehow bolder. The time chamber lifestyle is the practice of building an inner architecture stronger than the world's addiction to interruption. Cherry read standing up, tea cooling in the next room, phone warm in the hand. Another line. The chamber is not escape. It is compression. You enter to recover the force that ordinary time leaks out of you. Another. The goal is not balance. The goal is command. Cherry closed the file and stared at the dark screen. The tea card from the chamber seemed to flare again from memory, hiding behind preparation. Cherry let out a single breath through the nose, sharp enough to qualify as a laugh if someone wanted to be generous. This was worse than stumbling on an old idea. This was being confronted by proof. Proof that the thing Cherry had spent years approaching had once already been approached. Proof that the life inside the chamber was not the beginning of the work, it was the return to it. Cherry carried the phone back into the chamber. That mattered. Whatever answer came next had to cross the threshold properly. The room looked unchanged, but not neutral. The 6 cards still waited where Cherry had left them, and now, standing in the doorway with the phone in hand, Cherry could feel the absurdity and seriousness of the moment at once. A person could laugh at this if they wanted. A person could call it ritualized overthinking, aesthetic discipline, private theater. Cherry had no energy left to defend it. The only honest question was whether the chamber could survive contact with consequence. Cherry sat on the mat, phone in the lap, and looked at the 6 cards. The shaman card, remember who stands behind you. The animal card, stop circling your own life. The tea card, stop hiding behind preparation. The number card, foundation is already under you. The universe card, you do not need more permission. The cosmic card, hold stillness in destiny. It was almost irritating, not because it was mystical, because it was coherent. Cherry pressed call. Morrow answered on the second ring. You're alive, Morrow said. Cherry shut the eyes briefly. Same voice. Smoker's rasp gone lighter with age, but still carrying that permanent undertone of amusement that made sincerity harder and more necessary at the same time. Apparently, Cherry said. Good. I didn't feel like haunting a ghost today. Cherry almost smiled. Outside the chamber, that kind of line would have invited deflection. Inside it, Cherry let it land. You found the draft. I found a lot of drafts, Morrow said. That one still had bones. Silence. Not awkward. Measured. Cherry realized Morrow was waiting for the lie. The easy one. The polished one. The version where life got complicated. Timing got strange. Other priorities emerged. The work evolved into something less visible but deeply meaningful. Cherry had used versions of that lie on the self before. Not today. Yes, Cherry said. I got scared it would ask for my whole life. Morrow didn't answer immediately. When the response came, it was quieter. And Cherry looked around the chamber. At the low table, the turned clock, the 6 decks, the plain cup, the open journal. The room built one disciplined morning at a time until it became impossible to deny what it had been for. And it turns out it was my whole life anyway, Cherry said. That changed the air. Morrow exhaled like someone setting down a weight they'd been holding without admitting it. There you are. Cherry looked at the journal. The title written in unadorned letters on the page beneath the closed cover. The Time Chamber Lifestyle Morrow, Cherry said slowly. What do you want? The same thing I wanted when you handed me that draft in a coffee shop and pretended you didn't care whether I read it. Cherry remembered the day instantly. Cheap table, bad espresso, rain against glass. Cherry in a borrowed jacket, speaking too casually about something that had been burning the hands for months. Morrow continued, I want to know whether you're finally writing the thing you keep building your life around. Cherry's jaw tightened. There it was. Not flattery, not invitation, not even opportunity. Exactly. A mirror with a voice. Cherry stood and began to walk slowly around the mat, phone against the ear, free hand loose at the side. One step, breath. Another. The wolf card watched from the floor. I started this morning, Cherry said. Started what? The book. Good. How many pages? Cherry stopped walking. 1. That's not a book, Morrow said. That's how books begin. That's how excuses begin, too. Cherry's eyes went straight to the tea card. A hot, unwilling grin touched the mouth. Still charming, Cherry said. Still accurate. There was movement on Morrow's end papers, maybe a chair scraping. The ambient noise of a person already in the day while Cherry still stood inside a room that ran by other laws. Then Morrow said, listen carefully. I'm not calling to resurrect your nostalgia. I'm calling because a small press I'm consulting with is looking for nonfiction with teeth, not polished positivity, not optimize your morning routine mush, something with a real system behind it, real voice, real risk. Cherry didn't move. The city outside seemed to recede half a step. Morrow went on. I remembered your proposal because most people who talk about discipline sound like they want followers. Yours sounded like you were trying to survive. Cherry lowered slowly back to the mat. And they're taking sample chapters this month. This month, not someday, not when the mood became noble enough, not when the chamber had one more improvement, one more deck, one more cycle, one more private initiation. This month. Cherry looked up automatically toward the shelf where the angel number deck sat, then nearly rolled the eyes at the self for doing it. Morrow heard the silence. I can hear you thinking of 10 spiritual reasons not to do this, Morrow said. Cherry barked a real laugh then, brief and unguarded. 6, Cherry said. Maybe 7. Try one earthly reason instead. Cherry thought. Rainwater still beaded on the window at the end of the hall. The tea had gone from hot to warm. Somewhere beneath all the new structure, the old fear was showing its face plainly now. Not abstract anymore. Not noble. Exposure. To write was one thing. To arrange a life around writing was another. To call that arrangement a lifestyle was dangerous. To send it out into the world with no protective irony left on it, that was the real threshold. Cherry spoke before fear could redress itself as philosophy. I don't want to build a public voice that costs me the chamber. Morrow was silent long enough that Cherry thought the line had dropped. Then don't. Simple as that. Cherry frowned. That's not simple. It is, actually, Morrow said. You're imagining 2 corrupt versions of the future because they excuse the present. In one, you stay hidden and call it purity. In the other, you go public and call it betrayal. Those aren't the only options. Cherry said nothing. Morrow's voice sharpened slightly. You don't need a brand. You need a manuscript. The words hit hard because they were true in a place Cherry had been keeping blurry on purpose. Not a persona. Not an audience. Not a performance of having become the sort of person who writes from a chamber and speaks in systems. A manuscript. Pages. Chapters. An actual body for the thing. The chamber behind Cherry's ribs tightened into focus. This was it. The first true test of the lifestyle after the cards. Could the room remain sacred when it opened into task? Could the serpent coil hold when asked to move forward rather than inward? Cherry looked down at the journal, opened it, and turned to the title page again. Morrow. Yeah. If I do this, I do it from the chamber out, not from market logic in. I won't flatten it into advice for people who want a prettier form of self-abandonment. Good, Morrow said immediately. That would be unreadable. Cherry smiled despite everything. And I won't rush it just because someone else finally noticed. I'm not asking for rushed, I'm asking for real. Cherry traced the edge of the paper with one thumb. How many chapters for a sample? 3 strong ones and a spine. Core idea. Arc why this, why you, why now. Cherry looked around the room again. The answer stood everywhere. Why this? Because attention was being butchered in public and called life. Why you? Because Cherry had spent years building a chamber sturdy enough to test the claim. Why now? Because hiding behind preparation had become more painful than being seen incomplete. Morrow's voice softened. Can you do it? Cherry touched the pulse at the wrist. Still steady. More than steady. Ready. Yes, Cherry said. Good. Send me 10 pages in 7 days. Cherry's eyes widened. 7. No bargaining, Morrow said. You've had 3 years of bargaining. The T card might as well have glowed. Cherry closed the eyes once, then opened them again into the chamber exactly as it was. Humble, precise, impossible to mythologize beyond usefulness. 7 days, Cherry said. Welcome back, Morrow replied. The line went dead. Cherry sat in the silence after, phone still in hand. 7 days. Not a prophecy, a deadline. And somehow the deadline felt cleaner than inspiration ever had. Cherry placed the phone face down outside the edge of the mat. Then, without thinking too much about it, stood and began to rearrange the room. The low table moved slightly closer to the mat. The journal shifted to the center. A second notebook was brought in from the hallway shelf for structure notes only. The teacup was replaced with a larger one. The turned clock remained turned. Then Cherry wrote on a fresh page, Chapter 2, the door must follow under it. Another line, a chamber that cannot survive contact with the world is only a hiding place. Cherry stared at that sentence until it stopped being clever and started being law. This was the next form of the lifestyle. Not retreat, transfer. Could the same quality of attention that existed on the mat exist at a desk, in a paragraph, in a difficult email, in the middle of doubt? Could first light become first page? Could ritual become chapter? Could alignment become labor? Only one way to find out. Cherry returned to the 6 cards and, one by one, spoke what each would govern in the 7 days ahead. To the witness, Cherry said to the shaman card, guard the truth. To the animal, Cherry said, guard the pace. To the T, Cherry said, cut every lie early. To the number, Cherry said, keep the structure. To the universe, Cherry said, keep me from begging permission. To the cosmic, Cherry said, keep my fear small enough to carry. The room accepted this without drama. Good. Cherry sat down at the low table, opened the journal, picked up the pen. The city outside had fully awakened by then. Sirens in the far distance, doors slamming somewhere in the building, pipes shuddering alive in neighboring walls. A delivery truck backing up with impatient mechanical beeps. Ordinary time beginning its daily campaign against depth. Cherry wrote the first sentence anyway. Then another. Then a third that was bad, crossed it out, and wrote a better one beneath it. This too counted, especially this. By the time the tea had gone cold for the second time, 2 pages existed where there had been none. Not perfect pages. Real pages. Pages with weight. Pages that did not flatter the self, but did obey it. Around noon, Cherry finally stood, spine stiff, fingers ink-marked, pulse steady in the strange way it becomes steady after the body chooses a direction and accepts the cost. At the threshold of the chamber, Cherry turned back. The 6 cards still held their places. The room had not been damaged by work. It had deepened. Cherry understood then what the first chapter had only promised. The chamber was never meant to compete with life outside it. It was meant to train the quality of presence that would not collapse once the door opened. Cherry stepped into the hall carrying the notebook. For the first time, the chamber did not feel left behind. It came with.
Love on Lexapro is not a resource for professional medical advice or mental health advice. All content discussed on this platform are for informational and entertainment purposes only. If you or someone you love are experiencing a mental health or medical emergency, please call 911 or go to your nearest emergency care service. As always, be safe and be well.
Crazy bitch. 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 Crazy bitch.
Pew, pew, pew. Welcome to Love on Lexapro. I'm your girl, Danny. And this is my partner,
Rap, aka
Hey.
Anonymous, aka the Rap Palace, aka the King.
Hey. So we are shooting our pilot tonight, and we're pretty excited about it. So, woo. So we want to go into just the intros for ourselves. I can start first, if that's cool. Okay. So my name is Danny. This is our podcast. It's mainly about mental health, mental wellness, and our experience and
Lexapro.
in not necessarily Lexapro, but just being on antidepressants and finding love while also
On the antidepressant.
yes. So I'm Danny. I'm 40 years old from Dallas, Texas, and I used to be a school teacher, and my diagnosis is generalized anxiety disorder with clinical depression, and that's what I deal with. It's a big deal for me as far as applying that to my everyday life, even in what I do for a living. It's always important to do some social emotional shit. I guess, cause I guess we're American, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
As
all
Americans, we do that.
I think all Americans have mental health issues.
In some kind of way.
And no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah.
I think so. So that's me, Danny. And I mean, I realized that I had mental health issues probably when I was about 15, 16 years old, and I've been in mental health assistance and getting it since then. And yeah, I just told you my age, so you know how long I've been on those couches. It's just kind of one of those things. So I'm just introducing myself, and I guess my partner will introduce himself now.
Yeah, I'm Rap. I'm a goofball. I'm a veteran who has experienced PTSDs, different traumas.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome. Appreciate you. Continue.
I experienced a lot of things, went through a lot of things, went through a lot of fights, had a lot of head bumps that can possibly equals to concussions. I had a car wreck. I had all kinds of different experiences, and being on these different antidepressants, that experience can be terrorizing. You're nervous, you're scared, people gonna think you this and that. You don't know what people gonna think. You don't know if they gonna treat you differently. You don't know what the heck you gonna.
You don't be knowing shit. So basically, this is a pilot to walk through, to just give you guys a scope of our life and how we walk through it every day. Now, we decided as two people that experience mental challenges, emotional challenges, that fuck it, we was just gonna walk through life together. Cause we met at the library. At the quietest place on earth. But that's where we met. So this is a shoot the shit episode, and we just here. You know, we're not gonna keep y'all long, but we wanted y'all to get a feel for us and what we talking about. So we are in a relationship. It's one thing that I feel is kind of cool, because I don't think that's touched on enough, not even in our own community. As you can tell, possibly don't want to make an assumption, but we are both African American people, foundational Black Americans, and I would just say that, like, through that life, there's scopes and scopes and scopes and scopes and scopes. So there's a lot of intersections there, and I think what we're trying to do is we're just trying to, like, get through life together in that, and coping and dealing, because, you know, as long as you're living, if you believe in any kind of divine being, they ain't gonna never be through with you. At least that's what I think. What do you think, babe?
Yeah, they ain't ever be done with you. They gonna be like, get over here, like Scorpion.
Right, like, just let it go. So this is our look into life, and our invitation for you guys to join us into that, because we got a lot of bullshit to unpack here. A lot of bullshit. We got our own bullshit.
You got life bullshit.
You got your life bullshit, yup.
Then you got your thought bullshit. That nigga don't want to shut up.
Don't he never be quiet?
And then you be trying to go to sleep, and that nigga just constantly talking in the back. Hey fam, what about this?
On your shoulder.
Alarms going off.
Alarms consistently go. Let me tell y'all something. I know we all, if y'all listen to this podcast and you sticking around right now, you got mental health issues. I'm gonna tell you why. Because we be setting them alarms, and them alarms get on our nerves at the same time. The shit give me anxiety. I'm sorry. I said it and then I forget. Have you ever done that? Like, you literally just forget. Hey, I was supposed to get up yesterday at 8 a.m., but now that's over with. And it's going off now at 9 a.m. Now I'm mad on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm pissed on a Tuesday. So this is really just our shoot the shit episode. We're just, it's new to us. It's very new to us. We're a new couple. But we ain't that new.
New enough.
No, I was gonna say the same shit. Ooh, new enough. We are new enough. And again, like, we just be on shit. Like, we make sure we and when I say we're on shit, I'm not talking about drugs. Like, not them kind of drugs. I'm talking about, like, mental health drugs. I don't think we're seen enough. I just don't really believe we're seen enough. And so, shooting the shit is what we do as a couple. We shoot the shit. And I think that that's quite therapeutic, kind of, really, for any and everyone, just to shoot, just to talk the shit. You know what I mean? So, we won't stay long, but we do want to give our information out while we're here, and then we'll go into the rest. So, we have loveonlexapro@gmail.com. So that's LOVEONLAXAPRO@gmail.com. Loveonlexapro@gmail.com. You guys can send us any kind of concerns, any questions. We're happy to give advice. Again, he is a vet, and he done did everything in the world. I'm a teacher. Well, used to be. And so I think we could give you guys a really, 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 really good rollout of what the fuck we be talking about. But we're just here.
Yeah.
It's our podcast.
Welcome
here
to the new beginning.
to the new fucking beginning.
The last republic of water and light. By the third week of March, when winter should still have been bargaining at the gates, the city of Orison had begun to smell like July. Hot copper, algae, engine oil, and fear. From the eastern seawall to the inland salt terraces, heat lay over everything like a sentence already passed. The gulls flew low and angry. The desalination towers along the harbor coughed steam into a bleached sky. On every public screen, the city's governing intelligence, the chorus, spoke in its calm and sexless voice.
Conserve, comply, endure.
No one trusted the screens anymore, but everyone looked at them. That was the age, an age in which lies no longer arrived dressed as lies, but as emergency notices, prayer requests, market corrections, patriotic songs, leaked footage, synthetic witnesses, and maps with the roads erased. Children under 16 were forbidden from entering the mirror, the wild pain of social feeds that had once swallowed whole afternoons and then whole elections. But children found ways, as water found ways, as grief found ways. In Orison, boys learned to jailbreak filters before they learned to shave, and girls could distinguish a counterfeit tear from a real one by the timing of the blink. Leora Vale, who was 27 and employed in the Ministry of Memory, had made a profession of distrusting appearances. She worked under the old library where the city kept its vanished things: paper ledgers, pre-flood maps, rusted keys, treaties signed by nations that no longer existed, a violin with one string, a census of extinct birds. When the digital archives contradicted themselves, when footage seemed too clean, when the chorus amended history in the name of clarity, the ministers came down to the cool, dark stacks and asked Leora what the dead had meant. On the morning the trouble began in earnest, she was listening to a pipe. The pipe ran through the library vault like a silver vein. It had once fed one of the city's first cisterns, before desalination, before atmospheric harvesters, before investors had come with bright decks and darker ambitions and promised that no old infrastructure would ever matter again. The pipe was dry, but Leora pressed her ear to it anyway, because her grandmother Mara had taught her that cities remember through their metal.
What do you hear?
Nothing.
Then listen harder.
Now, with her cheek against the warm pipe and her hair falling across the dust, Leora heard it. Not water exactly, but the shape of water, a buried pressure, a whisper under stone. She drew back so sharply she struck her head on the shelf behind her. When she emerged into the sunlit atrium, the library was full of murmuring people. A grain levy had been announced overnight. Another convoy delayed in the eastern straits. Another tariff imposed somewhere beyond the horizon, at a port most citizens of Orison would never see, but whose name would